All right, here we are. Start of a new week and one that's been very, very positive from a BTC perspective. I kind of struggle to say a crypto-wide perspective, but we'll cover off that thought process shortly. So I think the first thing to kind of comment, and anybody that tuned into the stream on Sunday, this is really the move that I was looking for. This is the play that I was looking for, and I think the situation has developed and changed on the back of the Binance news into the Coinbase news. And I think now things are starting to clear up a little bit, right? The water's pretty choppy during that period of time. We're unsure what the spillover is going to be, what the market-wide impact is going to be, and we needed some time to see how the markets were going to react and what the nuances of the market were going to show. And I think that at this point in time, we can very clearly see that BTC is the market with the least impact in terms of the downside, and it's also the market that has performed the best since the waves of bad news started hitting. So we've really seen BTC again rise to the top in terms of its strength during that period, which we can now look back on and identify as strength. And we can see that obviously that strength has continued to put in the move that it has done in the last sort of 48 hours. So some very good signs from BTC's perspective. Now, obviously, the landscape has also started to shift on the back of that news. So what we've got from a technical perspective down here still is very, very simply this region where we're talking about kind of not being overly bearish as we're coming down into a weekly level of importance down towards this 24.4s positioned into spot. My spot position isn't, I'm not like Pico bottom here. My spot position is like 26.5s, 26.6s. We're certainly not down here at the lows of this. So my spot position is here, but we're in that zone. From a simple TA perspective on the weekly chart, I'm just playing this as a 50 bounce here off the RSI, which I think I covered off on the last video. If not, it was on stream on Sunday. And movement down into this zone here at the 24. So I'm happy with the bounce, as happy lower time frame with the bounce. And yesterday we broke out of this trend line here on pretty much every single time frame that you could have drawn this trend line on: the 3-day, the daily, the 12-hour, etc. Obviously all breaking out during yesterday's trading. What we also saw yesterday was a big increase in the percentage move of BTC during the US trading hours, which is something that we haven't seen in a long time. Burgers have simply been absent when it comes to BTC and actually just involved in the downside. So a big change kind of in the environment that we saw then. So as it stands, simple TA perspective first before we get into kind of like the narrative and the updated narrative that we've seen since. Holding at 24s, good from BTC. RSI coming back down to the 50 level, great for trend continuation. If we're taking the very simple approach here, we're going to say that this is a support hold on the weekly. This is a flip of this range now into support. The RSI back down here, and where we should be aiming for is fresh highs against this. So we should now be looking back towards 32s, 33s plus, and see how we deal with that resistance zone that we've got slightly above us here. So we're just kind of mapping out this one here again, and this is the zone that I think we'll trade back into. And we know significantly that number was never the monthly number. That number was kind of the 37s, 38s through here that I think is the level of importance. And actually this is probably, a better lower time frame zone for us to consider versus that higher time frame monthly. So we've got a weekly picture that kind of very simply is a retest of the range. It is a bounce off the 50 level on the RSI, and it looks as though therefore it's just continuation of this trend, and we would expect there to be a higher high through this region, which means a breaking of 31, 32,000, certainly back up into that region, and then we'll see what the impact is from there. Now, the BTC picture looks very strong. Like I covered off at the start, we had the wave of the Binance and the Coinbase news, and we needed to see the way the market would settle and react to that. And I think we've now got a very good impression of what that looks like. If we take BTC from just before that news started hitting, or pretty much the week of that news hitting, and let's clear up some of this when we do this. We can see that this area here, this is pretty much when we started to get our news. It was all here. It was the 4th of June. We had Binance news, recovery, Coinbase news, and then we were just, selling off as a result of that. So if we take that Sunday candle here, and we'll take the high of Sunday, and we can see that BTC is now trading 5% above when that news started hitting. So we can quite clearly see the strength on BTC through this region, 5% above that kind of bad news cycle start. And we've now started to shift the environment into the positive news angle. So we see, TradFi sources gearing up for, BTC ETF with BlackRock and, various other kind of TradFi strength showing on the back of the very negative news headlines regarding Coinbase and Binance. So whether or not you think that's timed perfectly, I'll leave that down to your own interpretation and beliefs on that thought process, but that's where we are as of right now. So what you have in BTC is you have a market that we know now was less impacted by the downside of those negative headlines. And it also has a very positive environment around it now from the TradFi perspective. So we've actually got something that weathered that bad news very, very well. And it's something that now actually has a lot of potential positivity running for it in terms of ETF news, TradFi allocations, etc. So that shift in just over 2 weeks' time has been pretty large for BTC. And again, I think when we look at this area now, we can make those kind of judgment calls in terms of what we've seen. When we were involved in that, I don't think it's kind of against anybody to be nervous about the picture. Certainly from a Binance perspective, certainly from a Coinbase perspective, to be nervous about the environment. From a technical perspective, I don't think you could have been bearish down at the areas we were. I think I said, if we lose that level, sure, be bearish. If we lose that weekly level that we broke out from and we flip it into resistance, yeah, by all means be bearish. It's going to be a long 2023. Based on where we've traded to now and how the price action has gone, and we look back at that zone, we can now identify it as strength and good resilience from BTC. And we've now started to see some of the upside. So I think BTC for me is very clearly a spot ownership market. It would be the primary denomination for where I would want my crypto portfolio capital to be allocated into. Most liquid market, very good strength, very good environment for it in terms of potential positivity hitting, good breakout from a daily perspective, just given the trend line over here, and we know we're bouncing off the weekly support. I don't think you're late to BTC. I don't think this is an area that I would be overly concerned about allocation now. Like I said, my allocation is like 26.6. I wasn't early in this move. I wasn't buying the lows. I had no interest in buying those lows. Bought into the strength, and fortunately that strength has continued through this region. So overall, for me, I think BTC obviously still continues to go higher. I think the daily picture is set up really nicely for continuation. This is the best level the RSI has been in a couple of months. This is a good move that we've seen so far on BTC. And yes, of course, the lower time frames very extended. One thing that I would say to people who are looking at trading this, just be very careful about divergences. If you're a divergence trader, BTC is doing the classic thing that very strong markets do, which look as though they're painting divergences and then end up blasting higher. So we can see through this region on BTC especially, you'd think, okay, yeah, 3 highs through here, 3 lower highs on the RSI through this region. We're going to make a divergence and trade lower, and then we just blast off again for another leg. This is just indicative of what strong markets do. So I would, just avoid kind of the short side altogether. I think it's a very awkward side to position on when you've got a very strong market, and instead focus on looking at when you can join that strength instead of trying to go against it and, fight that strength that we've seen through this region. Only other point that I'll add here is that when we get consolidations and we get grind ups like this, not even grind up because this is a really strong move here, but whenever we get these sort of price action structures, you want to make sure you're aware of the lows. And you also want to make sure you're aware of the lows that form after any period of impulse. So what we've got here is we've got this original low down here, and we've got the low that's formed after this impulse candle here at 145 this morning. So they're two areas that we'd be interested in. And we're interested in those because we're looking at what happens if we get a move here. Okay. So that's the first one on the lower time frame. That's kind of a classic move, either to take the low, fill out the impulse, and then recover. And that's it. Correction done, very strong trend. That's your pullback, that's your sweep, and then it's time to go again. Or if we get a more significant correction here, then these original lows that we form at points like this are very often good target points. The market will do this very aggressively, and then we'll recover almost in a V fashion. We tend to go back up the other side on any dramatic sell-offs. The one thing, again, I would kind of keep in mind through regions like this is that any sell-off like this is a significant move down for BTC. A 4% sell-off in BTC from here is a significant move. So if we are to get any pullbacks like that, then I suspect they are going to be forbidding, especially with a higher time frame picture the way it is. Now, the reason I've started with BTC and kind of continued the focus on BTC is because it is clearly the strong market here. Now, of course, you sit there and you'll say, well, yeah, but my alt is up, 15% in the last 2 days and BTC is only up 10%, right? Fine. If you're trading alts and you have knowledge of alts and you're aware of the way that the alts are moving, then sure, by all means, trade alts. My thought process through this is spot ownership of BTC and only BTC. I don't care about any other market for spot ownership through this region. If you want to actively trade, yeah, by all means, trade your alts, trade for the percentage gains in alts. But when it comes to the strongest bag and what we've seen in the news, the headlines, the current environment, the current price action, BTC is the obvious option for spot allocation. It makes no sense to be allocated to anything else. I gave the example this morning of Sol. And when you take a look at the Sol chart here, and you look at the 4-hour chart here, this is the same time period of BTC with the bad news events. That's Sunday the 4th candle where all of the news started breaking then in the following week. Sol is still down 25% from that bad news cycle beginning. And remember, BTC is up 5% over the same time period. So BTC 5% above those 4th of June candles and the start of the bad news. Sol still down 25%. Now, again, if you're trading Sol and if you want to be involved in this market, then by all means, you're still going to get great percentage gains. You're up 33% off the lows. You can still try and play this region. There might still be a catch-up push, right? You can get all of that. What I'm talking about in my thought process is the allocation of capital. I don't want it in things that are still down and trading poorly against the original kind of highs. I want the strongest markets, which means BTC. So alts for me are very much in the backseat for now. It's BTC as the primary driver of this. And then on the equity side of things as well, you've got MicroStrategy, Riot, and Mara that are all trading exceptionally well. And historically, you've done very well and are holding better gains and better returns in 2023 than even BTC is. I think MSTR is still up 125% in 2023 in comparison to BTC's 75%. There's still an outperformance on that side of things as well. So as it stands for now, the environment is potentially shifting. We potentially will see continued strength. The higher time frame for BTC looks super attractive. Looks very, very good through this region. So I'm very positive about the way that BTC is trading. If you're an active trader, if you're aware of the alts, if you've got levels, if you've got things that you're aware of in those markets, if you've got setups, trade them. I'm not advocating that you don't trade and take advantage of those setups if you want to be actively involved. If you want to sit back and have an easier ride that has less pressure on the downside and potentially more upside to it, then BTC is the option. It's a really kind of simple market at this moment in time. We talked about on the stream on Sunday, the BTC dominated moves. We've had a couple of them. And when BTC takes the lead and it kind of stays in control, everybody still looks for the catch-up play on alts. There's a number of things that I had this morning in response to my tweet, which were, about playing the catch-up, about buying, when you see BTC strength, choosing to buy an alt instead because you believe it can do the catch-up or it can outdo BTC in terms of the returns. my advice is always focus on the strength. Follow where the strength is. When you start to see the strength rotating out of BTC and into other markets, so when you suddenly start seeing alt outperform as a whole, then by all means reallocate or allocate in greater amounts to the alts that are now moving. But at this point in time, speculating that your alt is going to play catch up against BTC, which is the dominant market, doesn't really feel like the most sensible option. Trade it, fine. Apart from that, I think you're waiting until you get some signs that BTC is going to cool off and alts are instead going to kind of take the lead and run with the market instead. But for now, really good market picture, really good open to the week. Monday, Tuesday have been fantastic for the crypto markets, especially for BTC. Trading up above all of the bad news cycle stuff now, 5% higher, and BTC continues to dominate the landscape and the picture. And I think from the higher time frame perspective, I don't really see that situation changing too much based on a very good weekly chart from a simple TA perspective, and trend continuation potentially leading us significantly higher.